This idea that we have of consciousness was invented in the 17th century.
Oh, okay.
It was not always with us. And I think that's like a really key thing for us to remember, because it seems like, oh, that's just so intuitive, but it's not. This was an invention. And it was invented mostly by Descartes. Even though there were like predecessors and like going back to Plato and Augustine and stuff, but Descartes is the one I think we can blame most significantly. And what you have to remember, and what people seem to have forgotten, is when Descartes came up with this idea that the mind is in the head and that there's this sort of first-person story, cogito ergo sum, this whole thing. He was not coming up with this to explain the mind, which was not yet a problem. He was trying to invent a new theory of physics. So the physics that existed at the time was Aristotle's physics. And when you look at that, there was no real subject-object distinction. So for instance, like, we now, thanks to Descartes, make this distinction between like primary qualities and secondary qualities, right? And like subjective, objective. So in Aristotle, redness or sweetness or all these things were not like in our heads. They were just like part of the world. But also, like, objects did things because they had like internal motivation. Like things fell because they like yearned to be close to the earth. Like, so there was, objects weren't really objects and subjects weren't really subject. It was all mixed up. And Descartes came along, and he had come up with Cartesian geometry and Cartesian coordinates. And he thought to himself, like, if everything were just size, shape, and motion, if that's all that existed, then I could describe the whole universe just using my coordinate system. And I would have this new physics. But like, unfortunately, there's all this other stuff like thoughts and ideas and colors and sounds and none of that fits that story. So I need somewhere else to put them. And then he has this realization of like, oh, I can doubt everything that I see, but I can't doubt my doubting. So there's this difference between the things that are like self-knowing and then the things that are only known. And so he creates this distinction between like the cogito, which is like the self-knowing, self-referential thing, the I, the capital I, and the objects in the world. And so then he takes all this subjective stuff that doesn't fit in his coordinate system and he sticks it in the head, and then he takes everything else that's left as just objective. And so he writes, like, the words cogito ergo sum, like, this first appeared in a treatise on physics. This was a move for physics. And his physics wasn't great, but it did displace Aristotle's very quickly, and then Newton came along and Newton fixed it, basically, and it became Newtonian physics. But Newton's physics would not have existed without Descartes. And so it set the stage for classical physics. And at the same time, and in the same move, it invented this idea of consciousness as being something self-knowing that we experience directly, but the world we only experience indirectly, and that there's qualia and that there's objects and those are different. This whole story that we tell about consciousness came from this one move, which was to say, I'm going to make a split between subject and object. And so you get, from this one single move, subject-object split, you get consciousness and you get classical physics. And so when quantum physics comes along and goes, wait a minute, classical physics is wrong. This story doesn't work. And if you look at like Bohr and you look at like the origins of quantum mechanics, like what they're realizing is the issue is that subject-object distinction. The world cannot be divided up that way. You can get away with it for so long, but when you look really, really closely, you get this little h-bar, Planck's constant, which tells you this is measuring like a subject-object overlap that you can't get rid of. And
hello, everyone. Curt here. As I get older, I'm all about living deliberately or in a premeditated manner, and that includes what I eat. So there's this phrase, you are what you eat, and that resonates with me, especially when I found Mosh bars. Mosh was founded by Maria Shriver and her son Patrick Schwarzenegger to promote brain health through food, education, and research. Each bar packs 12 grams of protein and includes brain-supporting ingredients like ashwagandha, lion's mane, collagen, and omega-3s. Plus, they've got delicious plant-based options. Mosh donates a portion of all proceedings to gender-based brain health research through the Women's Alzheimer's Movement. 2/3 of Alzheimer's patients are women, so this is crucial work. In fact, that's something that's affected someone who is close to me. Mosh was even featured on Shark Tank. And if you're wondering about the taste, here's a snippet of me biting into their bars for the first time.
How's the flavor?
It's great.
Head to moshlife.com/toe, TOE, to save 20% off plus free shipping on the best sellers or plant-based trial pack. That's MOSHLIFE.com/TOE. Thank you, Mosh, for supporting this episode.
And so all of a sudden, that story was wrong. And you need to remove that subject-object split. But where we've ended up is in this really confused place where we kind of see that on the quantum mechanics side, but we're doubling down on the consciousness side. So we're walking around with this very incoherent metaphysics where we're saying, okay, yeah, like in quantum mechanics, like objects aren't really just objects, but subjects are still really subject. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, we need to be like, that split was the wrong move. You can't carve the world up that way. It doesn't work. And so you have to fix the story you've told on both sides.
Yes. And so what fixes it on both sides?
Okay, so from my perspective, cubism fixes it on the physics side, and enactivism fixes it on
and do they play well with one another? Is enactivism somehow interpreted in cubism or vice versa?
So they're doing very different things, but when you really look at what they're doing, they're both just trying to, like, enactivism is trying to understand mind without the subject-object split, and cubism is trying to understand the world without the subject-object split.
Yes, I see. So Carl Friston has something called active inference. Is this related?
Sort of. I think it depends how you interpret his stuff.
Interesting. There are interpretations of Carl Friston.
Of
That's
his
another podcast.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think like the way it's usually talked about is like he talks about, right, these Markov blankets as being like the split, which I think that's very cool. But then it's like you're sort of trying to infer, like he usually refers to like hidden states on the other side. And I think in like these other stories, you wouldn't want to talk about like like the world's not hidden to you. Like I think that idea that like I'm in my head and all I know is my own experiences and the actual reality out there is something hidden that I have to infer. Like I think that's already a problematic story. But I think probably you could talk about free energy without using that kind of language, and then maybe it would be fine.
So the solution to not dichotomizing the world into subject and object is what? Everything is object or everything is subject, or it's something else?
Something else. So I think that's the problem we've all gotten into is like Descartes was like, here's the dinner menu. You may have subjects and objects. And then people like are like, well, wait a minute, like this is dualism. I don't want two things. Like that's crazy. I will just take subjects. Or they're like, I will just take objects. But then there's like a few people that are like, you know what? Maybe these aren't the options. Like, why do I have to pick one of these things? Like,
yes, interesting.
So I think that the issue is, I don't think there's a reason those are the options, which are like in any perception, you have to make a subject-object distinction. In any quantum measurement, you have to make a subject-object distinction. But the difference is you want to say, in a participatory way, I am enacting that distinction as my way of making a perception or as my way of making a measurement. You don't want to say that distinction is given to me from the beginning in some like absolute sense. I know I'm speaking very abstractly here, but like I think that's like the issue is like you don't want to take the subject-object distinction as pre-given and absolute and fixed. So you definitely don't want to say it's all subject, and you definitely don't want to say it's all object, because that's already assuming that distinction is fixed. You want to say it's movable, and in any given situation, I can carve it up in different ways.
Does that mean you can carve yourself out of the situation? Can you carve it up in any way in the sense that it's just assigning different weights to subject and object? So I'm going to think of this situation as 99% subjective, 1% objective. Or I could think of this situation as entire 99.99, thus I'm minimizing my own contribution to the point you could make it 100% objective.
I've never thought of it that way, but I think that sounds right to me in some sense. I mean, you can't if you take yourself out of it entirely, you're dead in some sense, right? So like you can't do that. Bohr loved to talk about like a blind man with a cane, like a stick. And he would say, if the man holds the cane very tightly, he can use it to like touch the world. And in that sense, the cane is part of the man. And so it's on the subject side of the subject-object divide. But he could also hold it very loosely in his hand and like consider it as an object. And then like he's not touching the world with it, he's touching the cane. And so now the cane is on like the object side of the subject-object divide. So it's the same cane, but it could be on either side. So that division is like movable. And Bohr thought that was really the essence of quantum mechanics, was that division is not fixed. And in cubism, this becomes important too, because the cubist says the measuring device is an extension of the agent. So the line can be drawn, very differently in a given measurement scenario, depending on like how I want to divide up.
Okay, I'm much less confused.
Good.
That's interesting. In the same way that if you start writing, you become accustomed to writing, the pen is then an extension of you. You don't even think of the pen. You don't think of your individual fingers on the keyboard. So the keyboard is akin to an extension of you.
Yes.
So some people would say it's not just akin, it is. So John Vervaeke may say that. That's a cognitive science scientist who is also an advocate for 4E cognitive science, by the way.
Yeah.
You have just outlined that the cubist view is that in quantum mechanics, we're making measurements. The measurement device is at that point an extension of you. Actually, I'm still confused.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get some clarification on that afterward.
This is how I feel every day. I'm like, I almost, no.
Yeah, exactly. If you enjoyed this toe clipping, then the full video is linked in the description. You should also sign up for Toe Mail, which is again in the description and the pinned comment. You'll receive immediate access to all exclusive updates from the Theories of Everything podcast. It also helps me communicate directly with the core toe community. You'll also receive my top 10 toes. Think of it as the intellectual version of Quentin Tarantino's Obsession.